If you understand what's really happening, ladies and gentlemen, you'll know exactly what to do. Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gents. It's Jadu and Jonah here at the Cash Compound. We are the Banking Bros, and I'm the older brother. Can you tell that? Do people?
Probably not. People also assume that we're closer in age than we actually are, and I think that's because maybe I look old and you look young.
My man. Appreciate it.
This is kind of terrible, but
it's fine for me. It's fine for me. I'm at the age now where I appreciate being assumed younger at this. I've gotten to that point. Plus, I have a handful of kids as well. So, speaking of kids, if you are potentially not just binging this and listening to it around the holiday season of 2022, I've got some new content coming out on the TikToks right now and the YouTube shorts and the Instagram that have my kids in it.
Oh.
So my kids are actually showing up in a couple of pictures.
That's fun. My kids are, we have a countdown to Christmas on the mantle over the fireplace.
The Advent calendar?
We do have an Advent calendar. It's got toys in it. I won't get into it. Anyway, The countdown to Christmas, my son has changed it to the countdown to his birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Because his birthday is 5 days before Christmas.
Right.
So the other day, I'm looking at the countdown. I'm like, it's not. It's not.
So you didn't know he had changed it.
It's not 15 days till Christmas.
His math is a little off.
I'm telling my wife, my wife Chantel, I'm like, Chantel, it's not 15 days till Christmas. Jalen, my son, out of nowhere, I know it's 50 days till my birthday though.
Let's go.
So he's also 4. So
dudes be like, birthday.
He changes it at the incorrect time. He wakes up in the morning and changes it to tomorro's date.
Oh, you know right.
He's 4.
He takes a nap and he changes it again, right?
He changes it. Yeah, all the time.
Yes.
So it's fun. But anyway, that's what's happening in my house.
Okay, got it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you are enjoying your holiday time. If you're getting this right around December in 2022, we are approaching the final holidays of this year. So we're talking about the arrival syndrome today. And Jonah, as I mentioned, you've read the book, I've read the book. And when we're talking about the book, it's Becoming Your Own Banker, what I've started to call the field guide for the infinite banking concept, because it's almost like a workbook. Almost.
It's almost like a workbook, yeah. I'll give you that.
So what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the man who coined the phrase and unearthed the idea of utilizing your policy on a mono level and a family level as a banking system. R. Nelson Nash is Becoming Your Own Banker 5th edition. So in here, page 34, he mentions this topic, the arrival syndrome. And I think it's going to be really helpful for us to discover today what it is, what it isn't, because if you know what's really happening out there, you'll know what to do. The reason this topic came to mind, Jonah, and I brought it to you today, is because I just did a real estate presentation. I did a meetup.
Okay.
You were gone.
Okay.
I was here in Greenville, South Carolina, but you were in Puerto Rico, giving a little 1-2 punch for everybody down there. But afterward, I had a middle-aged guy who looked very professional. Guy was sharp, looking smooth, and he came up to me, handed me his card, said, "Hey, I appreciate what you said up there. I've looked into this before, so I'm familiar with what's going on, and I've run the numbers, and, I kind of get where it could be useful. But, I ran the numbers, and I got a lot of other things going on in my investment portfolio, and things are going good, so I'm not sure if I really need it."
Uh-oh. Sounds like the arrival syndrome.
Okay, so why don't you take a moment here to help us understand what is the arrival syndrome and how do we relate it to banking?
Sure. The arrival syndrome can apply to any area of life. The arrival syndrome, in my own non-Webster's definition, is when you think you know it.
Okay.
Or when you think what you're currently doing is good enough, and so therefore you don't learn, don't take a chance on, don't interact with anything new because, I've got it.
I already know that.
Yeah, I'm good. I already got it.
Already got it.
And
I'm
so
already ready already.
Yeah, and so what happens is what we can call that sometimes is just a closed mind, right? It's like, no one can teach me anything new because I already know. Or in this particular area. And again, what we're saying here is that it applies to the finance area, the arrival syndrome. It actually applies to a lot of people. We spend most of our time talking to people about what they don't know, right? And so it's very, very apparent if you've got information that a lot of people don't know, it's very apparent who displays this arrival syndrome very quickly.
Yeah, because you're right. It's in every area of life.
Right.
We have a financial podcast that's educating you on one particular thing, but man, how encouraging is it to be around people who already know everything?
It's not very encouraging at all. Normally, if they already know, they're not interested in hearing what you got to say. They're not really listening. They're trying to tell you what they're doing is better than yours. And it's like, but you're not, it's no conversation. You're not letting me say, oh, that's interesting about what you're doing, but what about this, right? Because they don't want to hear it because I already got it. I'm good.
It's very interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, this Nelson Nash, who brings this up in the book, references a business guru and consultant of the 20th century. This man became very famous, and he's popular in a lot of other areas. I've done a little bit of my homework around this guy, but Ed Deming, Ed Deming, because back in the day, everybody like hyphenated, or they just did initials. So who would you be if you were born in the 20th century?
J.M. Do.
J.M. Do. You like that?
No, I don't. But I don't know. I could make something work. I'd have to think about it a little bit further.
Okay. And you even on the gravestones and stuff,
Yep.
You're like, what was their name? Because it just said J.M. Do.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know who I'm looking at over here. Okay, so Ed Deming started to notice that there was a decline in American economic production around the time of the post-war. So when we're talking about World War II, and he tried to take his business philosophies and ideas. So this guy's a contemporary of Peter Drucker, if you know Peter Drucker out there. And what he said is, hey, there's this concept of economic value added, right? And he was talking about capital. He was talking about workforce development. He was talking about the culture of an organization and things like that. And he tried to teach this as a professor, as an economist, as a business consultant to a lot of American corporations and companies. And they were like, nah, we already got that.
We got it.
And
like the arrival syndrome to me.
What happened was he ended up taking his business ideas because he just wasn't getting them adopted in the Western world, like the Western hemisphere of the Western world. And he took it to the Western culture of Japan. And in Japan, who was having terrible post-war economies, because we dropped a couple bombs on them, didn't we?
Yeah.
They started to have super success over the course of several decades because of some of the implementation of what he was talking about. And now there is an annual award that's called the Ed Deming Award in Japan for business. And so what happened was Japanese manufacturing, automobiles and things like that, right, started to go so much past American production that they said, what is it? Hold on. We're obviously not doing what it becomes so apparent at some point.
It does.
And the problem is it's not apparent in the short term. There's another quote in his 5 Deadly Diseases. Ed Deming mentions behaviors that nourish short-term performance. And aren't we all stuck on that? Behavior. He's talking about workforce culture for sure and a lot of that type of thing, but behaviors that nourish short-term performance, and it's hard to see the forest through them trees.
It is. It is. I think that's one of the biggest things that you can learn in business, in life, in finances, is that you've got to start thinking long term. I know that R. Nelson Nash says it in this book, and we talk about that when we're teaching the infinite banking concept. But you've got to start seeing long term, right? You've got to start thinking long term. There's even some practices inside of the infinite banking concept that I would deem, man, these folks got away from thinking long term, which is why it's impacting their decision making right now. One of the quotes, I'll let you keep going, but one of the quotes in this particular chapter, subchapter, whatever you call it, header, in his book, The Arrival Syndrome, that I really like is down at the bottom of the first column in this page. But it says, as practitioners of teaching clients to develop their own banking systems, this is probably our hardest job. It's to get people to open up their minds and take an in-depth look at what exactly is going on in the business world and classify it correctly as what is seen. And I resonate with that a lot. That's part of what we were saying earlier. Sometimes when you know some information, even not all the information, I'm not claiming to know it all, but you've got a little piece of information that you know so many people don't know, when someone's got the arrival syndrome, it's like a huge turnoff. Like, oh my goodness, I can't teach you what in the world's going on? I just want to share with you what I know, right? And I know you don't know it, and you're trying to tell me you're good and you do know it, and it's like I literally, based on your actions, I'm looking at what you're doing and it's not making sense, which is the same thing that's happening with Ed Deming in the story, right? He's going, hey, America, hey, Western world, these are some things you need to do. They're no, we got it. And you're going, no, you don't have it, but okay, let's go try someone else who will listen, right? And then they listen, their production shoots through the roof, and then all of a sudden the Western hemisphere is going, oh, okay, hold on, come back.
Yeah.
Right?
So what this really comes down to is folks shortcutting what happens when they have to utilize and deploy capital. And that brings us to our word of the week. Is that all right? Is that the right?
It's the one we're using today.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that was the right kind of sound effect.
It's the right one we're using.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Word of the week is capital. How would you define capital without looking at what I've written down here? Because I think differentiating capital from money
Sure.
is going to be helpful, right? We do live presentations all the time. And what do we always say that the definition of money is?
A means of exchange.
Means of exchange. What would you say capital is?
Capital.
Make it up, of course.
Yeah. I'm making it up.
All
Coming
right.
off right off the dome.
JM Dues in dictionary here. Dome Dictionary.
That'd be a tough dictionary. The definition of capital is resources that you're going to deploy, attempting to make a return.
Okay, I like that. So the word that I like there and the first phrase are the best. Resources.
Yeah.
Capital isn't just money. It's the resources you have to deploy. Okay, so I've got a couple different hodgepodge dictionary definitions I found here.
Okay.
The sum of financial assets that are required to produce goods or services.
I love it. I was
Yeah,
close.
so you were there, right there. Anything a business owns that contributes to building wealth. And I think when we talk about the arrival syndrome here, we have to talk about how we all get, use, deploy, store, and move capital. The resources required to actually bring us the wealth we actually need.
That's right.
Because the money or the goods and the services that we're trying to move around isn't just in and of itself the goal. It's supposed to bring us wealth. It's supposed to bring us production. It's supposed to bring us a quality of life that goes higher.
That's right.
And here's the issue that many people have. Let's get down to the brass tacks. When we're talking about the infinite banking concept, we're not talking about a system that is about rates of returns of numbers. One of the things we're trying to make sure that we get is a return of the numbers, right? We're trying to make sure we keep them,
Yep.
right? Because everything out there that you find, think about the places where you save money or you have your capital, it's constantly at risk. We've talked about that on an earlier episode about within the month. We put it in places where there is risk of it going down, going away. You don't control it. And what happens here in the infinite banking concept, remember, ladies and gentlemen, is you keep control of all the money and it's never at risk. So if that is the case and you can keep it flowing so you can produce goods and services that bring you a better life, now you're thinking of your life a little bit more like Ed Deming would have talked about it. Your life is some sort of organizational business. Right? So the money that we're utilizing is in an organizational format business where we're not losing it off. It is not slacking. It is not going away. And it doesn't change hands. And we have, Robert, one of our banking bros, he's always talking about wealth transfers.
Yes.
And wealth transfers is what happens when the money moves. Do you lose some of it? Do you lose all of it? Do you have control of it where, who knows, it might move without you wanting it to move.
Right.
And so what the arrival syndrome and capital and all these things have to do is helping you understand that money is not just the only resource you got. We're talking about the resource of utilizing it well in time and efficiently and being able to control. And control is such a huge thing. You know, our buddy over there at the And Asset, they love to harp on the control.
Control's a big deal, though.
Yeah.
I've learned, I didn't think control was as big of a deal when I first learned about the infinite banking concept. And as I continue to use the infinite banking concept in my own life and teach people about it, I'm going heavy toward control.
Yeah.
Control's big.
Yeah.
It's real. That makes a huge difference. in your
So
life.
to give us some of the examples here, and I'll ask you about this guy that I met. So this guy was a real nice dude. Gave me his card and said, hey, call. You know, he wanted us to potentially do some private money investing with him.
Okay.
So when you're talking to people and you're hearing this guy say to you, well, I've looked into the numbers and I got a lot of great things going on with where I've got my money now. What are they missing about control?
Well, yeah, they're missing two things. The first thing that if I heard that statement and someone said that to me, the first real life thing that I would say is, well, I bet when he says I'm looking into the numbers, that I bet he didn't account for all of the equation, all of the numbers that he should have. I hear it so much, and people miss sections of the equation. Right? Here's an example.
I want an example.
Just to give you an example. Someone says, hey, I put money in my infinite banking policy. I put in $50,000 to my policy. First year's coming around. I can take $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 out, whatever it is. And they go, well, if I take $30,000 out, where's my other 20? It's a good question. It makes sense in the way you put it. It's not the whole equation. Right? It's not the entire math equation. The entire math equation is the $50,000 that I just deposited is still in the policy earning interest. So let's talk about how much interest it's earning with the dividends that it could be acquiring, right?
Okay.
The $30,000 that came out of the policy is the insurance company's cash value. They're going to charge you for that. So let's talk about the interest charged on that, right?
Okay.
And then, does that make sense? So
I know
not
it.
The whole equation.
Right.
I get that so often. There's so many questions that come up where that's not the whole equation. 2 weeks ago, why in the world would I borrow money from my policy at 5%? That's what the insurance companies charge me to pay off a car that's at 2%. Well, one, that's not the whole equation. Again, that's not the whole equation. You nix the entire section where your premium is there earning and there's dividends, right?
Right.
Then you're borrowing at 5 to pay. You see what I'm saying? It's not the whole equation. And that type of question is exactly the second point, the thing that you just asked me. Control. Why would I take money out of this at 5 to pay this off at 2? Why would I pay this hospital bill off at 0% because there's no interest? It's control. Control is why you do that. Let me ask you some very simple control questions for the average American who's at home in the car right now listening to this podcast. Okay, life gets a little crazy. You break an arm, you break a leg, the kid needs to go to the doctor, sick, I'm not working, something happens. What happens to the car note, the mortgage payment, the credit card bill? Do they stop? Do they say, oh, all right?
They do not, of course.
They do not, right?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, if you own all of those assets outright or you used your policy to fund them and then those same things happen, I broke something, the kid's in trouble, I'm sick, I can't work, what happens to the payments?
Of which part?
The answer is whatever you want to happen to the payments, because if you're in control, then you can stop them, you can adjust them, you can lower them. That sort of thing is big. People, I feel, live in this. I'm not trying to be super harsh, but there's just some people who live in like this fantasy world of, oh, I make good money now, I'll always make good money, nothing will ever happen to me, and so they let control just go.
And they don't have much capital. Their capital resource is actually them going to work and getting a check next week. And they don't actually have resources. Their resources is their energy and effort.
Right.
Because they don't have enough saved and they don't control what they do save, right? Because many people are saving in several different types of plans, mostly investing. We've covered that recently. And that money is not liquid. They don't control it. They've actually locked it up in whatever it is.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people who are doing investing, most of the people who we deal with, who have started or have looked into this and looked at the numbers, think that the money is gone when they place it inside the policy. They think the bill was paid and then it's done.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening here.
But
that is definitely what's happening in everything else they've looked at. I believe it was Garrett Gunderson who said out there, of course, he's written books around this topic, and he helps and teaches and preaches what Nelson taught him as him and Nelson were friends, is that if the factors, equations are true, meaning that if all the numbers in a infinite banking scenario, if the factors, equations, and growth is true and guaranteed, then the numbers don't actually matter. So that means a lot of different things. It doesn't matter how much you decide to start a policy with. Everybody out there is wondering when they get on our stuff, when they call us, how much should I do? Well, if it's always going up and it's always guaranteed and it's always growing, then the numbers don't matter. You just pick whatever you want to do, whatever you can do. Don't think that you're missing out on something or there's a better way to get started other than starting when you can, with what you can, and starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the proverb is that the best time to plant a tree is
100 years ago. Is it 100?
Well, I've always heard 20.
20 years ago.
And the second best time?
Right now.
Right now. So the arrival syndrome helps you understand, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know it all either. What we're trying to do, here's another thing that I want to say as we kind of wrap it up, this podcast series today, back in the book for the first time in a long time, is I thought when I first started my policies that the policies were going to be the be-all, end-alls. Maybe you can like subscribe to that thought. Like I was going to have enough cash value to be able to just make it.
Yeah, get a bunch of them, not do anything.
This was the savings account I needed.
Policies, or put a bunch of money in, and then
yes,
good.
This was the quote unquote investment that was going to take me to the top.
Yeah,
and
a lot of people can think that.
Yes,
but it's not. This is the banking system that you would then do your investments from. Right.
Right.
This is the control, right, that you need in order to make sure that the money stays in your family, to make sure that you're always keeping it, that you're earning, that you have the control. This is what it is. Then you go do all that other stuff with it, right? So, yeah, I can get on board with that.
I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we might have to drop you some Ed Deming links talking about organizational culture and productivity. One other thing that he mentioned in his 14 points of management, in number 4, focus on the total cost, not the price tag. What's the total cost and the opportunity cost? That's a word and phrase we use a lot. What's the opportunity cost of not putting your money in a place where it always is guaranteed to go up and you control it?
There it is.
I always historically want to focus on cost only. What does it cost me to put this in? What does it cost me if I get some money in the policy today and then I don't have every single dollar plus tomorrow? Rather than, what is the price tag on that? Rather than what's the total cost of not doing it, and controlling capital and having it grow and be there for you when you need it and to be flexible. So
there it is. Before we wrap up today's episode, we want to give a huge shout out to our fan follow of the week. And our fan follow this week is actually Dietrich Murray. So Dietrich Murray, I think, is following us on YouTube currently. So Dietrich, if you're watching this, I'm sure he's a recent follower. So if you're watching this, leave your questions in the comments or say hi, anything you want. We want to make sure that you are getting the answers that you need and that you feel welcome. And so we appreciate you. And we wanted to make sure that you knew that. If you're interested in watching if you're on YouTube listening to this, there is actually another video with a little bit of a different perspective on the arrival syndrome that we'll actually put a link to above, so you can get to it here shortly. If you are not on YouTube watching it, then go over to YouTube and watch it. You can see us live and get our expressions and things as we talk about stuff. But other than that, I think I'm good.
All right. J.L. Do signing off, ladies and gentlemen. Have a holly jolly Christmas season when you listen or hear this. And, of course, celebrate whatever wonderful holiday and Festivus for the rest of us if you happen to just, binge listen at a different time.
There it is.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon. And follow along and subscribe.